So starting off our food prep of the day, I wanted to try out making some English muffin bread. I've had some before, but it was like from a grocery store bakery or something, so definitely not homemade. And I wanted to try my hand at it because I heard it was pretty easy, since it's not like an enriched bread and stuff like that. So it's really just flour, salt, water, yeast, and that's it. So I let the yeast proof for a little while in the warm water, then I added my salt and 2 cups of flour initially, and then mix in the rest of the flour. And it comes together in a really, really sticky dough, so you'll definitely have to grease or flour your hands to handle it. But in the end, you'll see that it kind of reminds me of sourdough. Just the way that it comes out, and it's sticky and tacky and stretches a lot, and you don't have to knead this a lot. You just kind of stretch it a little bit together and like use your fork or spoon or whatever to mix it in good, but you don't actually have to sit there and knead it for 8 minutes or whatever like a typical loaf. So that was really nice. Now I'm moving on to making a chai concentrate recipe. So I have been in search of the perfect chai latte concentrate recipe, not one that's too weak. I want one where I can actually really taste the spices, but I still want the right balance of spices. Some of them are too peppery or taste like one spice too much, that it's and it's kind of the wrong flavor. I don't really know how to describe it, but if you're into chai lattes, I highly recommend this recipe. This one is like fully from scratch. It has you like toast the spices and stuff, which I thought that was really cool, and you get to steep it as long as you want to make it as strong as you want, not just the tea part, but the chai spices as well. So it actually called for like whole cloves and pods of like cardamom and cloves, allspice, and then peppercorns or whatever, and fennel seeds. I didn't have any fennel, so that's the one thing I was completely missing. The other things I just used ground spices for. It still turned out really well, so I would encourage you, if you only have ground spices, to just work with that anyway. Also, it called for star anise and orange zest. I didn't have any oranges on hand, and I didn't have any star anise, so I used extract of both of those. They were pure extracts. I don't know if that'll make a difference, but this was a really fun recipe to try out, and I had to get out a lot of spices out of my spice cabinet, but really it didn't take that long, and it was pretty easy. So here I am adding those extracts, and you also add vanilla. You can add a vanilla pod. I was struggling trying to get a vanilla pod out without spilling my vanilla, so I just did the extract. But anyway, so whenever this is done, you let it come back up to a boil, and then you take it off the heat, and then you cover it and let it steep for 20 minutes and longer if you want it to be spicier. So then, and before you do that, you also add brown sugar to it too. So it is sweetened. It's not super sweet. This is about like 3 cups of water, but then, you know, as it goes, it steams off to about like 2.5 cups. So just keep that in mind. So if you want to make a lot of this, you might want to consider that a lot of it is going to steam off. So I'm going to let it steep for 20 minutes, and then I'm going to butter the loaf pans. I thought about using avocado oil spray for the pans just to make it easy and quick, but every time I do that, my bread does not come out the same way. It's butter or nothing. So that's what I'm doing, and this dough was really kind of fun to work with just because it reminds me of whenever I was doing sourdough. So I'm just gently gathering it, trying to get some of the bubbles knocked out of it. But since it wasn't really a firm dough, I didn't want to like punch it because I was worried it would just like stick all over my hand. So even worse than it did. I just kind of gathered it, and I wasn't going to weigh out the dough to split it. One of my pans was a little bit bigger anyway, so I just divided it roughly and kind of plopped it in each pan. That's the other nice thing about this, is you don't actually have to like try to roll it into the right shape. So it's super easy to throw in the pans, and then I'm just gonna let it rise again. I just let mine rise until it was pretty poofy and bubbly. I'd say about 30 to 45 minutes. And now that the chai spice has been steeping, I think I let mine go for about 20 to 25 minutes. And then I just put 2 tea bags in it. We love this tea. It's called Carolina Select. And I believe it's grown in South Carolina and North Carolina. You can get it at some like local grocery stores and stuff like that. So if you're in the area, obviously. But it is really good. We really like it, and it's pretty affordable too. And here I am just taking it through a tea strainer. I have this one, I've had it for a long time. It's by Tea Forte, and it comes with like a little ceramic cup and stuff that it nests into. And I'm just pouring it through that and putting it in a mason jar. There's so many like ground spices and stuff. It was kind of hard to like get it all through, and I just had to end up dumping that last part out. And here is the loaf. You can see all those pretty little bubbles that formed in it, and I'm gonna go ahead and bake this. Mine took a little bit longer. Like the recipe says 25 minutes. I think I had it in there like 30 to 35 minutes. I was very happy to be inside just working in the kitchen while that storm was going. It only lasted for a few hours. It rained super hard and then it was over. So I am just making the latte to try it out, and I poured, the recipe said it recommends like using half milk and then half concentrate. So I did that. The concentrate was still pretty hot, so I didn't even bother to heat up the milk. I was just doing this for taste, not for looks. And I was trying this like pourable like mason jar lid or whatever. Anyway, it wasn't working, but come to find out, I think it's one of the ones I got from Temu. So like 2 years ago or something. I don't know. I shouldn't have, and haven't used it since. But what I have used is the one that worked with the gray lid, and it's like county line or country line or whatever. You can find it on Amazon. I found it at Goodwill, but it works perfectly. No spills or drips at all. So I'll have to, I guess, recycle the Temu one since it's all plastic. Because nobody's gonna want it if it doesn't work. Anyway. The chai latte was very good. I was pretty impressed, especially, getting out all the spices from my cabinet. I was really hoping it was going to be good after all that. So here I am throwing together some chocolate chip cookies. These are our favorite. They have like the nice kind of like crispy caramelized edges while being soft and gooey. And I'm making the full batch of these. These make quite a bit. I'm not really sure how many, but I'm just going to scoop these out on a tray and freeze them and then throw them in a bag. And I also baked some on this day and for us to have for dessert. And then you'll see I'm going to get started on our dinner soon. So for dinner, I was just going to throw together some meatloaf really quick. I had a pound of ground beef and some homemade breadcrumbs that I made from a sourdough loaf, and I add onion powder, garlic powder, salt, pepper, and an egg, I think. Were just really simple seasonings, but I seasoned it well enough to where it was really flavorful. And then I also added mushrooms chopped up. So the meatloaf turned out delicious. I like to top ours with marinara sauce instead of ketchup. Or instead of ketchup or barbecue sauce. I guess you could do either. But it was very good. If you haven't tried it with marinara, I highly encourage you to do that. I think it tastes way better. I love ketchup, but I think it tastes way better than having the ketchup on top of it. So I baked this at 400 degrees for like 50 minutes, I think, and it turned out really good. And yeah, I'm using the same pan I got one of the bread loaves out of. There was no bread stuck in it at all, so I figured I might as well make it serve a dual purpose, and then I just cook it covered for most of the way. So and I'm just slicing into this loaf while it's still warm. My husband picks at me, rightfully so, because I cannot cut a loaf of bread straight to save my life. It doesn't matter if you use a guide. It doesn't matter. It's always at an angle. So he came up whenever he got his pieces for dinner, because we had this as a side for dinner. He squared it off for me so that our loaf of bread would be straight again. But this was very good. I had a bite warm, and then I also toasted the other half of my slice to see how it would taste toasted, to see if it was any different, and both were equally delicious. And you get all the nooks and crannies like you would in an English muffin. So 10 out of 10. So here's our dinner. I just steamed some broccoli to go with everything, and the meatloaf came out moist and amazing. And thanks so much for hanging out with me. I hope I inspired you to fill your pantry, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.